It was just an ordinary Tuesday when my entire life imploded. The kind of day when nothing special was supposed to happen. I remember standing in my kitchen in our suburban Boston home, morning sunlight filtering through the plantation shutters, casting striped shadows across the marble countertops that Nathan and I had spent months selecting when we renovated last year. I was sipping coffee from the mug he'd given me for our 5th anniversary, the one with "Forever Yours" inscribed in that elegant script that had once made me smile. Now that mug felt suddenly heavy in my hands, like it was filled with lies instead of coffee. My phone had just chimed with a text from my twin sister Jessica, and those few words on the screen had sent my world spinning off its axis. "Call me ASAP. It's about Nathan." That was all it said, but something in those 7 words made my stomach drop. Jessica never texted about Nathan. They had always maintained a polite but distant relationship, the kind that exists between in-laws who respect each other but never quite connect. So why was she texting me about him now? And why the urgency? Jessica and I share the twin connection people always talk about, the one that science can't quite explain, but twins know is real. We've always been able to sense when something was wrong with the other, even from thousands of miles away. It's how I knew the exact moment she crashed her car in college, and how she called me seconds after I fell and broke my arm 3 years ago, despite being across the country. So when I saw her message, that familiar dread washed over me, that instinctive knowing that something was terribly wrong. I set down my coffee mug with trembling hands and called her immediately. Jessica answered on the first ring, her voice tight with tension. "Emily," she said, and that one word contained volumes. Jessica is a commercial airline pilot for American Airlines, something she had dreamed about since we were little girls watching planes take off from Logan Airport. She FLIs international routes, and I always envied her glamorous life of traversing the globe while I settled into suburban domesticity with Nathan. "I'm on a layover in London," she continued, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I need to tell you something, but I don't want to do it over the phone." My heart hammered in my chest. "Jess, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I could hear her take a deep breath. "I saw Nathan yesterday, on my flight to London." The room seemed to tilt sideways for a moment. Nathan was supposed to be in Chicago for a business conference. That's what he told me when he kissed me goodbye on Sunday morning, his Louis Vuitton suitcase packed with the clothes I had carefully ironed for. Chicago, not London. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "That's impossible," I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. "He's at a marketing conference in Chicago. He's presenting tomorrow." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Jessica finally said, her voice gentle but firm. "He was in business class on my flight to London yesterday afternoon. I served him personally. He was with a woman." The world seemed to pause, suspended in that terrible moment of realization when everything you thought you knew starts to crumble. I found myself remembering all the Chicago conferences over the past year, all the late nights at the office, all the unexplained charges on our joint credit card that Nathan always had a plausible explanation for. How many of those explanations had been lies? "Did he see you?" I managed to ask, though my throat felt like it was closing up. "No," Jessica replied. "I was covering for another flight attendant in first class, and he doesn't know I sometimes work that section. I saw him bored, and I stayed in the galley whenever possible. He never came up front." My mind was racing now, piecing together a terrible puzzle. "The woman," I said, the words feeling like broken glass in my mouth. "What did she look like?" I wasn't sure why I needed to know this detail, why I was torturing myself, but some part of me needed to form a picture in my mind. "Emily, are you sure you want to, please?" I cut her off. "I need to know," Jessica sighed. She was blonde, tall, designer clothes. Beautiful in that polished, expensive way. They were. Affectionate, holding hands. She was wearing a large diamond bracelet that caught the light every time she moved. He kept touching it, like it was significant somehow. A diamond bracelet. My birthday had been last month, and Nathan had given me a pair of modest sapphire earrings, claiming that business had been slow lately. I thought about our joint bank account, which had indeed shown few deposits from his consulting firm. Had he been spending his money elsewhere? On someone else? They were laughing about something when they boarded. Jessica continued, her voice careful. They seemed very familiar with each other, comfortable. Each word was a knife slicing through the fabric of my marriage, revealing the emptiness behind the facade. "I have a photo," she said quietly. "I wasn't going to show you, but you deserve to see the truth. I'll text it to you." Seconds later, my phone pinged. With shaking fingers, I opened the message. And there he was. My husband of 7 years, the man who had promised to love only me until death parted us, leaning close to a stunning blonde woman. His arm was around her waist, his lips near her as he whispered something that made her laugh. They looked like lovers who had shared 1,000 intimate moments, completely at ease in their shared space. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. 7 years of marriage, 3 years of dating before that. A decade of my life given to a man who could lie to my face with perfect sincerity, who could tell me he was flying to Chicago while boarding a plane to London with another woman. Are you still there? Jessica's voice pulled me back from the abyss I was staring into. Yes, I whispered. I'm here. When do you fly back? I needed my sister. I needed her to hold me while I fell apart. I have a return flight tomorrow evening. I land at Logan at PM your time. Can you wait until then before you do anything? Promise me you won't confront him yet. We need to think this through. The pilot in her was speaking now. The professional who never acted without a flight plan, who always assessed all possible scenarios before making a decision. And she was right. I needed time to process the plan, to figure out what to do with this bomb that had been dropped into my life. I promise, I said, though every cell in my body was screaming to call Nathan, to demand answers, to release the tidal wave of hurt and rage that was building inside me. I'll wait for you. After we hung up, I stood motionless in my kitchen, staring at the photo on my phone until the screen went dark. Then I looked up at our refrigerator, covered with magnets from all the places Nathan and I had visited together: Paris, Rome, San Francisco, Maui. Happy memories, or so I had thought. Had he been thinking of her even then? Had he been comparing me to her as we walked hand in hand along those foreign streets? The thought made me physically ill. I barely made it to the bathroom before I emptied the contents of my stomach. As I knelt on the cold tile floor, I realized I needed proof beyond Jessica's photo. I needed to confirm this nightmare with my own eyes, to know without a shadow of doubt before I confronted the man who had apparently been living a double life right under my nose. With a strange calm that comes only in moments of absolute crisis, I went to our home office and opened my laptop. Nathan and I shared an Amazon account, and his Kindle was synced to it. I could see what he was reading, and often teased him about his taste for spy thrillers. But we also had separate email accounts. I had never, in 7 years of marriage, felt the need to invade his privacy by logging into his email. I had trusted him completely. What a fool I had been. I stared at the login screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Did I even know his password? Then I remembered that about a year ago, he had asked me to check his work email for an important message while he was driving. He had given me his password then, and I realized with a hollow feeling that it had changed shortly afterward. But perhaps his personal email still used the same password. I typed it in. Emily Love 2010. The year we met. Tears blurred my vision as the inbox loaded. The first twist of the knife. His password still invoked my name, our love, while he was flying across the ocean with another woman. The second twist came immediately. Sitting at the top of his inbox was a confirmation email for a dinner reservation at the Savoy in London. Tonight. PM table for 2 under the name Nathan Reynolds. I scrolled down, my hands now steady with purpose rather than shaking with shock. Flight confirmation. Hotel reservations at the Ritz. Not for Chicago, for London. And they went back months. Every business trip to Chicago had actually been to London. The third twist of the knife. An email thread with someone named Lauren. I clicked on it, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The emails were intimate, filled with inside jokes and plans for their time together in London. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, she had written 3 days ago. 6 whole days together this time. Heaven. His reply had come minutes later, already packed. Missing you every second. I had helped him pack that suitcase, carefully selecting his best suits, making sure he had everything he needed for his presentation. The emails went back months, each one more intimate than the last. They were in love. Or at least, they thought they were. Looking at the timestamps, I realized he had sometimes emailed her while sitting next to me on the couch, while I thought he was checking work messages. How many quiet evenings together had actually been shared with her? How many times had he smiled at something on his phone, and I had assumed it was a funny text from a colleague rather than a love note from his mistress? But the true devastation came when I saw an email with the subject line, "Anniversary plans." Their anniversary. Apparently, they had been seeing each other for exactly 1 year. The email detailed his plans to celebrate at an exclusive restaurant in London, followed by a weekend trip to Paris. I checked the date. He had told me he was going to a marketing conference in Chicago that weekend. It was the same weekend as our wedding anniversary. He was planning to celebrate his affair's anniversary instead of our marriage. The rage that swept through me then was like nothing I had ever experienced before. It was primal, all-consuming. a living thing that clawed at my insides, demanding release. I wanted to destroy something, everything, to make the physical world reflect the devastation of my internal landscape. Instead, I took screenshots. Methodically, I documented every email, every reservation, every lie. Then I forwarded the key emails to my own account as backup. If I was going to confront this, I would do it with irrefutable evidence. When I had finished, I closed the laptop and sat back, strangely calm in the eye of the emotional hurricane. What now? The woman Lauren had mentioned 6 days together in her email. That meant Nathan wouldn't be back until Saturday. Jessica would be home tomorrow evening. I had time to think, to plan, to decide what I wanted to do with the shattered remains of my life. I don't remember much of what I did for the next several hours. I know I called in sick to the elementary school where I teach 4th grade. I know I took a long, scalding shower as if I could wash away the betrayal that felt like it had seeped into my skin. I know I found myself standing in our walk-in closet, staring at Nathan's neatly arranged clothes, wondering if she had ever been here, in our home, touching these things, sleeping in our bed. The thought made me grab the nearest object, a crystal vase he had given me for Valentine's Day, and hurl it against the wall. The sound of it shattering was both terrible and satisfying. Then I sank to the floor among the glittering shards and finally let myself cry, deep, wrenching sobs that felt torn from the center of my being. By the time the tears subsided, leaving me hollow and exhausted, night had fallen. I couldn't bear to sleep in our bed, so I made up the guest room and lay awake for hours, replaying every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I should have seen. There had been changes in Nathan over the past year, subtle things. He had started going to the gym more regularly. He had updated his wardrobe. He had become more protective of his phone. Classic signs of infidelity that I had dismissed because I trusted him implicitly. How could I have been so blind? When sleep finally came, it was filled with dreams of falling, of running through empty airport terminals, of watching planes take off without me. I woke at dawn, my pillow damp with tears I didn't remember crying. The reality of my situation hit me anew with the morning light. My marriage was a lie. The future I had planned, the children we had talked about having soon, the retirement we had been saving, for all of it built on quicksand. I picked up my phone and looked at the photo Jessica had sent me. Nathan and the woman Lauren frozen in that moment of intimacy. The longer I stared at it, the more details I noticed. The way his fingers played possessively against her waist. The way she leaned into him, comfortable and familiar. The matching luggage at their feet, high-end and coordinated. The gold watch on his wrist, not the one I had given him for his last birthday, but a new one I had never seen before. Each detail was a fresh cut, a new revelation of how complete this deception had been. I spent Wednesday in a fog of grief and rage, alternating between periods of numb disbelief and frantic activity. At one point, I found myself methodically removing all traces of Nathan from our living room, taking down photos, packing away books he had given me, hiding the throw blanket we used to share during movie night. Then I would catch myself and stop, uncertain of what I was doing or why. Did I want to erase him from my life? Did I want to confront him? Did I want to try to save what suddenly seemed like a marriage built entirely on lies? I didn't know. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same again. When the doorbell rang at PM, I nearly jumped out of my skin. Jessica was standing on the porch, still in her pilot's uniform, her face tight with concern. One look at her, my mirror image bearing the weight of my pain, and I collapsed into her arms. We didn't speak as she guided me to the couch, as she held me while I cried, as she stroked my hair the way our mother used to do when we were children. When the storm of emotion had passed, she made us both tea and sat across from me at the kitchen island. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I showed her the emails, the reservation, the anniversary plans that coincided with our own. As I spoke, I could see her expression hardening, the protective anger of a twin who feels every hurt inflicted on her other half. What do you want to do? She asked when I had finished. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to call him right now and scream at him. Part of me wants to pretend I never found out, to see how long he'll continue lying to my face. And part of me, I hesitated, ashamed of the thought that had been circling my mind. Part of me wants to go to London, to see them together with my own eyes, to confront them both in person. I expected Jessica to tell me that was a crazy idea, that I should stay home and consult a lawyer, that I should take the rational approach. Instead, she nodded slowly. I think you should, she said. I think you need to see it for yourself to fully accept it. And I think you deserve the chance to look him in the eye when you end this. She reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. And I'm coming with you. Everything moved quickly after that. Jessica still had 3 days of rest before her next scheduled flight, and she made a few calls to colleagues. By midnight, we had 2 last-minute tickets on a Thursday morning flight to London. We would arrive Thursday evening, check into a hotel, and then… What? The plan was nebulous beyond that point. Find them, confront them. Beyond that, I couldn't think clearly about what would happen next. As we packed a small carry-on for me, Jessica already had her flight bag with essentials. I felt like I was moving through a dream. Was I really flying to London to confront my cheating husband? Was this really my life now? Jessica, practical as always, insisted I try to sleep before our early flight. You need your strength, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Tomorrow will be one of the hardest days of your life. She was right, of course. But sleep seemed impossible with my mind racing through scenarios of what might happen in London. Would Nathan be shocked to see me? Ashamed? Angry? Would this Lauren person know about me? Was she an innocent party in this? Or was she fully aware that she was seeing a married man? The questions circled endlessly, keeping me awake until Jessica finally gave me a sleeping pill from her flight kit. Pilot's little helper for jet lag, she explained. It'll give you 4 solid hours. Better than nothing. The pill worked, dragging me down into a mercifully dreamless sleep. When Jessica shook me awake at AM, I felt groggy but marginally more functional. We drove to Logan Airport in silence, the early morning darkness wrapping around us like a cocoon. It was surreal to be heading to the international terminal, knowing that somewhere across the ocean, my husband was waking up next to another woman, completely unaware that his carefully constructed double life was about to implode. Jessica, using her airline credentials, got us through security in record time. As we sat at the gate waiting to board, she finally broached the subject we had been avoiding. What do you want out of this confrontation now? What's your best case scenario here? I stared out the window at the planes taxiing in the pale dawn light, considering her question. Answers, I said finally. I want to know why. How long this has really been going on. Whether anything in our marriage was ever real. And then, I took a deep breath. I want him to see exactly what he's losing. I want to walk away with my dignity intact. I don't want to cry or scream or beg. I want to be the one who ends things, not the pathetic wife who was too blind to see what was happening right in front of her. Jessica nodded, her expression solemn. You're not pathetic, Emily. You trusted your husband. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. He's the one who threw it away. She squeezed my hand as our flight was called for boarding. And for what it's worth, I think you're incredibly brave for doing this. I don't know if I could face it head on the way you are. I didn't feel brave as we settled into our seats. I felt terrified, sick with anxiety, uncertain of everything I had once believed about my life. But as the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the air, I also felt a strange sense of liberation. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one keeping secrets from Nathan. I was the one taking action instead of reacting. I was the one in control of what happened next. The 7-hour flight passed in a blur of fitful dozing, picking at airplane food, and half watching movies I couldn't focus on. Jessica let me be, understanding my need for mental space to prepare for what lay ahead. By the time we landed at Heathrow, it was PM London time. According to the dinner reservation I had found in Nathan's email, he would be taking Lauren to the Savoy at PM. We had enough time to drop our packs at the hotel Jessica had booked near the Savoy and freshen up before heading to the restaurant. In the taxi from the airport, a sudden thought struck me. What if they don't show up? What if they change their plans? Jessica gave me a reassuring smile. Then we'll find them somewhere else. I saw his hotel reservation, remember? We know where they're staying. One way or another, you'll get your answers tonight. Her confidence steadied me as we checked into our hotel, a boutique place just a few blocks from Savoy. As I splashed water on my face and reapplied my makeup, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom. I looked different somehow. Older, perhaps, or just wiser. The naive woman who had kissed her husband goodbye on Sunday morning no longer existed. In her place was someone harder, someone determined to face the truth no matter how painful. At 7:45 p.m., Jessica and I entered the Savoy's famous Thames foyer, the elegant room glowing with soft lighting that flattered every face. We don't have a reservation, Jessica told the maitre d', but we'd like a table with a view of the room, if possible. It's my sister's first time in London. She flashed her most charming smile, the one that had always gotten us out of trouble as teenagers. The maitre d' glanced at his reservation book, then nodded. Of course, madam. Right this way. He led us to a small table partially concealed by an ornate column, but with a perfect view of the main dining area. Perfect for surveillance. We ordered champagne liquid courage, Jessica murmured, and I tried to control my trembling hands as my eye scanned every entrance, every table. At precisely 8:05 p.m., They walked in. Nathan, my husband, looking more handsome than ever in a tailored suit I had never seen before, and beside him, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm, was Lauren. Jessica had been right in her description: tall, blonde, expensively polished. She wore a blue dress that highlighted her figure, and on her wrist gleamed the diamond bracelet Jessica had meant. They were seated at a table in the center of the room, perfectly visible from our hidden vantage point. Nathan pulled out her chair, then leaned down to kiss her cheek before taking his own seat. Such a small gesture, so innocent on the surface, yet it confirmed everything. The casual intimacy between them was unmistakable. This was not a business relationship. This was not a fling. This was a serious affair, conducted in full public view in a city where he thought no one would know him. I watched, paralyzed, as they ordered drinks, as they leaned toward each other across the table, as Nathan reached out to touch her hand, his thumb caressing her knuckles in a gesture I had once thought was reserved for me. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see their expressions, the soft smiles, the knowing looks, the comfortable laughter of two people who had long ago moved past the early nervousness of a new relationship. "Breathe, Em," Jessica whispered beside me. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath. I took a shaky sip of champagne, the bubbles burning my throat. "What do you want to do now? Do you want to approach them, or just watch for a while?" I considered the option. Part of me wanted to storm over there immediately to create a scene that would etch this betrayal into Nathan's memory forever. But another part of me, the part that had always been more strategic than impulsive, wanted to wait, to observe, to gather more evidence of exactly what I was dealing with. Let's wait, I decided. I want to see how they are together when they think no one is watching. So we watched. We saw Nathan present Lauren with a small gift box, saw her exclaim with delight at whatever was inside. We saw them order elaborate meals and share bites from each other's plates. We saw Nathan signal for more wine, his credit card undoubtedly absorbing charges that would never appear on our joint statement. I now realized he must have a separate account I knew nothing of. And all the while, I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching a movie about someone else's life. It wasn't until Nathan leaned across the table and whispered something that made Lauren throw back her head in laughter that the reality crashed back into me. That was my husband. The man I had built my life around. The man I had planned to have children with. And he was in love with someone else. "I'm ready," I said to Jessica, setting down my champagne glass with a steady hand. "It's time," Jessica squeezed my shoulder. "Are you sure? We could follow them after dinner. Confront them more privately." I shook my head. "No, I want witnesses. I want this to be public." I wanted him to feel exposed, the way I had felt when I discovered his betrayal. I wanted him to remember this moment every time he set foot in a fine restaurant. I stood up, smoothed down the simple black dress I had hastily packed, and walked directly toward their table, Jessica following close behind. They didn't see me approach, too absorbed in each other. I was 3 feet away when Lauren noticed me, her eyes flicking up with the mild curiosity one might have for a passing stranger. Then Nathan turned to see what had caught her attention, and the transformation of his face would have been comical under other circumstances. His expression morphed from relaxed happiness to shock, to confusion, to horror in the space of 2 seconds. The color drained from his face so completely that for a moment I thought he might faint. "Emily," he gasped, half rising from his chair. "What? How? What are you doing here?" His voice was strangled, barely audible. Lauren looked between us, her perfectly shaped eyebrows drawing together in confusion. "Nathan? Who is this?" Her British accent took me by surprise, though it shouldn't have. Another detail he had kept from me: his mistress was English. "Hello, Nathan," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "Surprise. I thought I'd join you for dinner." I turned to Lauren, extending my hand as if this were a normal social introduction. "I'm Emily, Nathan's wife." But I'm guessing from your expression that he never mentioned me. The look on Lauren's face was its own kind of devastating confirmation. Pure shock. Absolute disbelief. Her wide eyes swung to Nathan, who seemed incapable of speech. "Wife?" she repeated, her voice rising. "What is she talking about, Nathan?" So she hadn't known. That was something, at least. I wasn't the only one who had been deceived. "Yes, wife," I confirmed, still unnervingly calm. 7 years next month. Though apparently he's planning to spend our anniversary celebrating a different relationship entirely. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, turning the screen to show them both the screenshot of their anniversary plans email. "Paris looks lovely that time of year. Were you planning to take her to that little CAF on the left bank that we discovered on our honeymoon, Nathan? The one where you said you'd never been happier in your life." Nathan had gone from pale to ashen, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Around us, Nearby diners were beginning to notice the unfolding drama, conversations quieting as attention shifted our way. "Emily, please," Nathan finally managed. "Let me explain." "Not here. Let's go somewhere private to talk about this." "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Are you embarrassed? Uncomfortable having your lies exposed in front of all these people?" Imagine how I felt when my sister texted me to say she'd seen you on her flight to London when you were supposed to be in Chicago. At the mention of Jessica, Nathan's eyes darted to where she stood slightly behind me, arms crossed, face set in a protective scowl. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "The flight attendant," he murmured, the final piece clicking into place for him. "Pilot, actually," Jessica corrected, her voice ice cold. "I was covering for a colleague in first class. Lucky coincidence, don't you think?" Lauren had recovered enough from her shock to find her voice. "Is this true?" she demanded, turning to Nathan. "Are you married? Have you been lying to me for a year?" When Nathan didn't immediately answer, still apparently struggling to process the situation, Lauren stood up abruptly, gathering her purse in a small gift box. "I can't believe this," she said, her voice shaking. "A year, Nathan?" "A year of my life." She turned to me, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I swear to you, I had no idea." He told me he was divorced, that his ex-wife lived in Boston with her new partner, that they had separated years ago, but only recently made it official. Each word was another twist of the knife, but also a confirmation that I wasn't the only victim here. Nathan had constructed elaborate lies for both of us. "I believe you," I said quietly. "He's apparently very good at lying to women he claims to care about." Lauren nodded once, a gesture of solidarity between betrayed women, then turned and walked quickly toward the exit, her dignity remarkably intact despite the public. I almost admired her composure. Nathan half rose as if to follow her, then sank back into his chair, apparently realizing the futility of trying to salvage either relationship point. "Emily," he began again, his voice pleading. "I know how this looks, but if you just let me explain." "Explain what, exactly?" I interrupted, finally allowing some of my rage to surface. "Explain how you've been living a double life for at least a year. Explain how you've been lying to my face every single day. Explain how you used our anniversary as an opportunity to celebrate your affair." My voice was rising now, and I could feel Jessica's hand on my arm, a gentle reminder to keep control. "There's nothing to explain, Nathan. I've seen the emails. I know about the separate bank account. I know about the trips to London. I know everything that wasn't entirely true. There were undoubtedly more lies I hadn't yet uncovered, but the bluff worked." Nathan seemed to deflate before my eyes, all pretense of innocence abandoned. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he said, the classic line of cheaters throughout history. "It just happened. And then it got out of control, and I didn't know how to end it without hurting anyone, so you decided to hurt everyone instead?" I asked, genuinely baffled by his logic. "How was this ever going to end, Nathan? Were you planning to keep up the double life indefinitely? Flying back and forth across the ocean, lying to both of us? Did you think you wouldn't get caught?" He had no answer for that. Around us, the restaurant had gone quiet, dozens of strangers witnessing the implosion of my marriage. The maitre d' was hovering nearby, clearly torn between letting the drama play out and intervening to preserve the restaurant's elegant atmosphere. I decided to spare him the decision. I'd made my point. I'd confronted Nathan publicly, ensured that both he and his mistress knew exactly what kind of man he was. There was nothing more to be gained by prolonging this scene. "I'll be filing for divorce as soon as I get back to Boston," I said, my voice now steady again. "Don't come home. I'll have your things packed and sent to your parents' house." I turned to leave, then paused, one final thought occurring to me. I picked up Nathan's nearly full glass of red wine and calmly poured it over his lap, staining his expensive suit. "That's for the 7 years of my life that you wasted," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked away, Jessica by my side, leaving Nathan to deal with the whispered stares and the spreading stain that would be impossible to explain away. By the time we reached the hotel, the adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me shaky and nauseated. Jessica guided me to the small love seat in our room and poured me a glass of water from the bathroom tap. "You did it," she said softly. "You faced him, and you did it with more dignity than most people could have managed." I took a sip of water, my throat suddenly parched. "Did you see his face?" I asked, when he realized who I was. "Who you were?" "He looked like he'd seen a ghost." Jessica nodded. "Twin power," she said, a weak attempt at our childhood phrase for the special connection we shared. "He never stood a chance against both of us." I managed a small smile at that, but it faded quickly. The reality of what had just happened, of what it meant for my future, was sinking. My marriage was over. The life I had planned, the future I had imagined, none of it existed anymore. I would have to start over completely. 3. What do I do now, Jess? I whispered, the question encompassing far more than just our immediate plans. Right now, Jessica replied, you breathe. You let yourself feel whatever you need to feel. And then tomorrow, we fly home and you start rebuilding your life without him. She sat beside me on the loveseat, her arm around my shoulders. And you remember that you are not alone. I'm with you every step of the way. And Nathan just lost the best thing that ever happened to him. Someday he'll realize that. I leaned my head against her shoulder, tears finally coming now that we were alone. I loved him so much, I whispered. I thought he loved me too. Jessica stroked my hair, the way she had when we were children, and I was upset. I know, she said simply. I know. We spent a restless night in that London hotel room, taking turns sleeping and staring at the ceiling. By morning, my shock had hardened into resolve. I would not allow Nathan's betrayal to destroy me. I would use it instead as a catalyst for change, for growth, for building a life that didn't depend on someone else's honesty. Our return flight wasn't until evening, leaving us a day to fill in London. What do you want to do? Jessica asked as we picked at the breakfast she'd ordered to our room. Shopping? Sightseeing? Or just hide in here until it's time to leave? I considered the option. Part of me wanted to crawl under the covers and not emerge until it was time to go to the airport. But another part of, a stronger part, rebelled at the thought of wasting a day in London feeling sorry for myself. Let's explore, I decided. I've never been to London before, not really. Nathan and I had a layover here once, but we never left the airport. We had been on our way to Paris for our 5th anniversary. I remembered with a pang. Had he met Lauren on that trip? Had the seeds of his betrayal been planted then? I pushed the thought away. It didn't matter now. I'd like to see the Tower of London, I said, focusing on the present. And maybe Buckingham Palace. All the tourist things. Jessica smiled, relief evident in her expression. Tourist things it is, she agreed. Let's go be shameless Americans for the day. As we wandered through the history-soaked streets of London, I found myself thinking about the story I would tell someday when people asked what happened to my marriage. Would I mention this impromptu trip to London? The public confrontation? Or would I simply say, we grew apart? That bland phrase that could cover everything from minor disagreements to catastrophic betrayal. At the Tower of London, staring at the crown jewels, I was struck by the irony of admiring symbols of power and commitment, while my own symbol of commitment, my wedding ring, felt like a burning brand on my finger. I twisted it off impulsively and dropped it into my purse. Jessica noticed but said nothing, just squeezed my hand in silent support. By the time we boarded our flight home that evening, I felt different. Not healed, that would take much longer, but changed. The woman who had flown to London in a haze of shock and betrayal was not the same one returning to Boston with clear eyes and a determined heart. During the flight, as Jessica dozed in the seat beside me, I started making lists on the airline notepad. Practical things first. Call a lawyer, change the locks, close joint accounts. Then less immediate, but equally important, find a therapist, join a gym, reconnect with friends I had neglected during my marriage. And finally, dreams for the future. Travel on my own, take a photography class, maybe even consider moving to a new city for a fresh start. Nathan had stolen years of my life with his lies, but he wouldn't get a single day more. My future was my own again, for better or worse. We landed at Logan Airport on Friday evening to the news that a nor'easter was brewing, the sky already heavy with approaching snow. It seemed fitting somehow, the external world reflecting the storm that had torn through my life. Jessica insisted on coming home with me, unwilling to leave me alone in the house that now held so many tainted memories. I can take a few more days off, she assured me. The airline owes me time anyway. I didn't argue. The thought of walking into that empty house alone was more than I could bear. As we pulled into the driveway, I half expected to see Nathan's car there, to find him waiting to beg forgiveness or offer explanations. But the driveway was empty, the house dark. Of course it was. He was still in London, probably trying to salvage something with Lauren, or perhaps drowning his exposure in some pub. Either way, he wasn't here, and that was a relief. Inside, everything looked exactly as I had left it 2 days ago. The abandoned coffee mug still sitting on the counter where I'd set it down after Jessica's text. Had it really been only 2 days? It felt like a lifetime had passed. Jessica made us tea while I walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. Our bedroom, where he had held me and lied to me. Our office, where he had emailed his mistress while sitting feet away from me. Our living room, where we had curled up to watch movies, his mind perhaps already planning his next trip to see her. Every space felt contaminated by his deception. I can't stay here, I said when I returned to the kitchen. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I need to sell this house, Jess. I need a fresh start. Jessica nodded, understanding without needing explanation. You can stay with me for now, she offered. My apartment isn't huge, but the guest room is yours for as long as you need it. Her apartment in Cambridge was small but warm, filled with mementos from her travels, and none of the ghosts that haunted this house. Let's pack some things for you tonight, she suggested. Enough for a few weeks. We can figure out the rest later, so we spent the evening filling suitcases with my clothes, toiletry, important documents. I took only what was undeniably mine, leaving anything Nathan and I had purchased together. I didn't want anything that would remind me of our shared life. As we worked, my phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from Nathan, which I ignored. I wasn't ready to speak to him yet, wasn't sure if I would ever be ready. Whatever explanations or apologies he wanted to offer would have to wait. Right now, I needed space to process, to grieve, to begin rebuilding. By midnight, Jessica's car was packed with the essentials of my life, reduced to what could fit in 3 suitcases and a few boxes. As we pulled away from the house, snow beginning to fall in thick, silent flakes, I didn't look back. That chapter of my life was closed. It was time to write a new one. The first week after the confrontation passed in a blur of practical tasks. I found a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases involving infidelity. I opened new bank accounts in my name only and transferred my share of our joint funds. I filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, the evidence I had gathered making it an open and shut case according to my attorney. I ignored Nathan's increasingly desperate attempts to contact me, instructing my lawyer to handle all communication. I began seeing a therapist twice a week, trying to process the trauma of such complete betrayal. And through it all, Jessica was my rock, her steady presence keeping me anchored when it felt like I might drift away on waves of grief or rage. Thank you for listening to me talk about this, everyone. I say now, pausing in my story. I know it's not easy to hear about betrayal like this, but sharing helps me process what happened. If you're going through anything similar, please know you're not alone. I'll continue my story now, but if this resonates, I hope you'll hit the like button and maybe even subscribe to hear more stories like mine. It was during the second week that I finally agreed to meet with Nathan. Not alone, I wasn't ready for that, but in my lawyer's office, with Jessica waiting outside. He looked terrible, unshaven and hollow-eyed, as if he hadn't slept since London. Good, I thought with a vindictiveness that surprised me. Let him suffer a fraction of what I was feeling. Emily, he began as soon as I sat down across from him, my lawyer a silent presence beside me. I am so sorry. I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. It was exactly what I had expected him to say, and it ignited a flash of anger that burned through my careful composure. Never meant to hurt me, I repeated. You lived a double life for a year, Nathan. You lied to my face every single day. You spent our anniversary with your mistress. How exactly did you think that wouldn't hurt me? He flinched at the word mistress, as if giving his betrayal a name made it more real. It wasn't supposed to go on so long, he said, his voice low. It started as, I don't know, an escape, a fantasy. London was a different world, and I was a different person there. But then it got complicated, and I couldn't find a way out that wouldn't destroy everything. So instead you destroyed everything by getting caught. I finished for. How convenient for you. He had no response to that, just stared at his hands where they rested on the table between us. My lawyer cleared his throat, reminding us of the purpose of this meeting. Mr. Reynolds, you've been served with divorce papers citing adultery as ground. Do you intend to contest this? Nathan shook his head. No, he said quietly. I won't contest anything. Emily can have the house, the accounts, whatever she wants. He looked up at me, his eyes damp. I just want you to know that what we had was real. I did love you, Emily. I still do. Lauren was. She was a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I studied him. This man I had thought I knew better than anyone in the world. Was he telling the truth now? Had he really loved me while systematically betraying me? Did it even matter anymore? If you loved me, I said finally. You had a funny way of showing it. I stood up, signaling that the meeting was over for me. My lawyer will handle the rest of the details. Don't contact me directly again. As I turned to leave, Nathan called after me. What about Lauren? Did she? He trailed off, unable to finish the question. I paused at the door. If you're asking whether she took you back after finding out you were married, the answer is no, apparently. She has more self-respect than that. It was a guess. I had no idea what had happened between them after I left the restaurant, but from the way Nathan's face crumpled, I knew I had guessed correctly. I felt no satisfaction in this knowledge, just a hollow confirmation that Nathan had indeed lost everything through his own actions, as I had. The divorce proceeded quickly, Nathan offering no resistance to any of my terms. The house was sold, the proceeds divided. Our joint assets were split, though I discovered that Nathan had indeed been maintaining a separate account. I knew nothing about the one he had used to fund his double life. My lawyer argued successfully that I was entitled to half of that as well, since it contained marital assets that had been hidden from me. Within 3 months, I was legally single again, with enough money from the divorce settlement to start fresh. I found a small apartment in Cambridge, not far from Jessica's place. I returned to teaching, finding solace in the uncomplicated joy of my fourth graders. I joined a support group for people dealing with betrayal trauma, finding unexpected comfort in the stories of others who had survived similar experiences. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my sense of self, my trust in my own judgment, my hope for the future. Nathan moved to Chicago, the real Chicago this time, not the fictional one he had used as cover for his trips to London. I heard through mutual friends that he had taken a new job there, a fresh start of his own. I wished him neither well nor ill. I simply wished to forget him, to excise him from my heart and mind like a surgeon removing a tumor. But healing from betrayal isn't that clean, that simple. There were still nights when I woke up reaching for him, days when a chance reminder would bring the pain rushing back as fresh as ever. My therapist assured me this was normal, that healing wasn't linear, that I would have good days and bad days. On the bad days, Jessica would show up with ice cream and silly movies, or take me for long walks along the Charles River, letting me talk or cry or sit in silence, whatever I needed. It was during one of these walks, nearly 6 months after the confrontation in London, that Jessica asked me a question that caught me off guard. Do you regret it, flying to London, confronting him like that? I stopped walking, considering the question seriously. Did I regret the impulse that had taken me across an ocean to face my husband's betrayal head-on? No, I said finally, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, some part of me might always have wondered, might have been tempted to believe whatever explanation he offered. Seeing them together, confronting him in person was painful, but it was also clarifying. Jessica nodded, understanding without needing me to elaborate. Twin power, she said, bumping her shoulder against mine. I smiled at the phrase that had defined our relationship since childhood. Twin power indeed. I couldn't have done it without you, Jess. Not just the London trip, but everything after. You've been my lifeline. She waved away my thanks, embarrassed as always by emotional declarations. That's what sisters are for, she said. Besides, I got a free trip to London out of it, and the satisfaction of watching you pour wine on Nathan's crotch. That alone was worth the price of admission. We both laughed there, the sound startling a flock of ducks nearby. It wasn't the first time I had laughed since the divorce, but it felt different, somehow lighter, more genuine, a sign that perhaps the worst of the pain was behind me. As we resumed walking, I found myself thinking about the future for the first time in months. Not just the immediate future the next day, the next week, but the larger shape of the life I wanted to build. Teaching still fulfilled me, but I had always dreamed of writing children's books as well. Perhaps it was time to pursue the dream, and travel, real travel, not the carefully scheduled trips Nathan had always insisted on. Jessica was always telling me stories about the places her job took her. Maybe I could join her sometimes, see those places for myself. I'm thinking about taking a sabbatical next year, I said, the idea forming as I spoke it. Maybe spending the summer traveling. Would you mind having a companion on some of your layovers? Jessica's face lit up. Are you kidding? That would be amazing. I've been trying to get you to travel with me for years. She was already planning out loud, listing cities she frequently flew to, places she could show me, adventures we could have together. Listening to her enthusiasm, I felt something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. It took me a moment to recognize it as excitement, as hope. The future stretched before me, no longer a continuation of the life I had planned with Nathan, but something entirely new, shaped by my own desires and choices. There would still be hard days ahead, I knew. The trauma of betrayal doesn't disappear overnight, or even in 6 months. But for the first time, I could imagine a future that wasn't defined by what I had lost, but by what I might find. A future that might, in its own unexpected way, be better than the one I had thought I wanted. 1 year after the confrontation in London, I found myself back at Logan Airport, this time not as a betrayed wife flying to confront her cheating husband, but as a woman embarking on an adventure of her own choosing. Jessica had arranged her flight schedule so we could travel together to Barcelona for 2 weeks, the first stop on my summer of exploration. As we waited to board, I thought about how much had changed in a year. The divorce was long finalized. I had sold most of my furniture along with the house, keeping only a few cherished pieces that had been mine before the marriage. I had published my first children's a story about twin sisters who could communicate without words. I had made new friends through my support group, reconnected with old ones I had neglected during my marriage. I had even gone on a few dates, though I wasn't ready for anything serious yet. Most importantly, I had rediscovered who I was without Nathan, or rather, who I had always been beneath the identity of Nathan's wife. It hadn't been an easy. There had been days of devastating grief, nights of crippling anxiety, moments when I wondered if I would ever feel whole again. But sitting in that airport with my twin sister, passport in hand and the world waiting, I knew that I had survived the worst betrayal of my life and emerged stronger for it. "Ready for this?" Jessica asked, nudging my shoulder as our flight was called for boarding. I smiled at her, my mirror image and my savior. "More than ready," I replied, and I was. Ready not just for Barcelona, but for whatever came after. Ready for the life that was now entirely my own to shape. I want to thank all of you for listening to my story. If this tale of betrayal and recovery touched you in some way, please hit the like button right now. My favorite part was when I confronted Nathan with the Savoy and poured wine in his lap. What was the most surprising moment for you? Leave it in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Until next time, remember that even the most painful endings can lead to beautiful new beginnings.